You're looking at the skull of a child, just 7 years old. It's 850,000 years old, pulled from the cold earth of a cave in Spain. But what really stops you isn't the age, it's the marks. Not from an animal, not from time, but from tools. Stone blades like the ones our ancestors used to butcher deer, the same tools that were used to butcher this child. And here's the terrifying part. The ones who did it weren't monsters. They weren't another species of predator. They were human too. For most of our history, for the vast stretch of time where humanity was fighting not to rule the world, but just to survive it, the deadliest threat wasn't saber-toothed tigers, or dire wolves, or cave bears. It was us, other humans. That's not speculation. It's not myth. It's not Hollywood. It's carved into the bones, scattered in the shadows of caves, lying in wait for those who dare to see the truth. In 1994, a team of archaeologists working deep inside the Atapuerca Mountains of northern Spain began excavating a site called Gran Dolina. They had no idea what they were about to uncover. One of the researchers, Aurora Martin Frances, was brushing away layers of ancient soil when she found it. A skull fragment. Human. Clearly a child. She thought maybe 6 or 7 years old based on the tooth formation. But there was something wrong. The bone had scratches. Not chaotic, not natural. Parallel lines, methodical, deliberate, as if someone had taken a blade to it. More bones emerged. A jawbone, a femur, ribs, finger bones. 11 individuals in total. Nearly a third of them bore the same marks. Clean-cut lines from stone tools. Impact fractures where marrow was extracted. It wasn't symbolic. It wasn't ritual. It was practical. Butchery. Exactly the same way you'd process an animal. And that's exactly what the scientists found at the same level of the cave. Butchered deer, wild cattle, and horse bones, showing the exact same signs of cutting, breaking, and scraping. The same patterns, the same process. No difference, except the species. What they were looking at was the earliest clear evidence of cannibalism among our human ancestors. And not just once. These bones came from multiple layers, meaning this wasn't a one-off event in a moment of desperation. This happened again, and again, and again. Cannibalism practiced like hunting, like cooking, like storytelling, a part of life. The humans responsible belonged to a species called Homo antecessor, an ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. They stood upright, walked like us, thought like us. Some even believed they might be the first species to bury their dead, and also the first to eat them. But let's not imagine something primitive, like a panicked band of cave people chewing on bones in a freezing winter. The signs point to something more organized, more deliberate, more intelligent. The long bones were cracked open to suck out the marrow. The skulls were broken with blows to access the brain, one of the most calorie-dense organs in the human body. The cuts were clean, anatomical, and the victims, not random. Most of them were children or adolescents, none older than 13. Why children? Because children are the future of rival groups. They're mobile, aware, protected, but not strong enough to fight back. Taking them wasn't just feeding your group, it was weakening another. It sounds strategic. It was. Dr. Marina Mosquera, who spent years studying the remains, proposed the chilling hypothesis. This wasn't survival cannibalism. It was warfare. It was about dominance. About preventing the rise of a rival group by taking out their next generation before they could fight back. But it gets darker. This behavior wasn't limited to Homo antecessor. It didn't die out with them. It reappeared in Neanderthals, and later, in us. Fast forward nearly 800,000 years to Goyet Cave in Belgium, 40,000 years ago. Here, a group of Neanderthals met their end. Not from a predator, not from the cold, but from each other. 5 individuals, same story, same cut marks, same fractures. Their bones were processed exactly like the reindeer bones found beside them. Marrow extracted, skulls broken for brain tissue, but Goyet adds a new layer to the horror. They didn't just eat the bodies, they used them. A femur was turned into a tool for flint knapping. A tibia was used to maintain blade edges. Imagine using the leg bone of someone you just consumed to craft the knife you'll use the next day. It's hard to even find the right word. It's not just brutality, it's practicality, efficiency. These weren't monsters, they were problem solvers. just like us. And that's the part that should haunt you the most, because we've done it too. Rewind to about 14,700 years ago, just before agriculture, Gough's Cave, England. The occupants were Homo sapiens, our species, United States, the Magdalenian people. They left behind more butchered human remains. Same signs: marrow extraction, skulls broken open. But this time, something else. Skull cups. You heard that right. They turned human skulls into drinking bowls. And not roughly, carefully, deliberately. The edges were smoothed, the cranial vaults shaped with the same level of detail we see in their carved bone tools and weapons. One of the bones even has zigzag engravings, the oldest known artistic engraving on human bone. They didn't do this out of desperation. The cave is full of animal bones: horse, deer, birds. They weren't starving. They had choices. They chose humans. Why? Maybe power, maybe dominance, maybe ritual, or maybe it was just an available source of nutrition like any other animal. And once you cross that line once, it gets easier. If you think this was ancient behavior long left behind, think again. Throughout history, even into modern times, cannibalism has resurfaced again and again, not just in moments of starvation like the Donner Party or the crash survivors in the Andes, but in war, in ritual, in acts of power. The line between culture and instinct, between civilization and survival, it's thinner than we like to believe. The archaeological record doesn't lie. Over a span of 1.5 million years across species, continents, climates, we see the same story play out. Cut marks on human bones, skulls broken for brains, children selected, bodies processed with the same tools and methods as prey animals. This isn't an anomaly, it's a pattern. It's a possibility that's always been there. In our evolutionary toolkit, we like to think of ourselves as evolved, civilized, beyond all that. But the truth is, we're not new. We're ancient. And the software running in our minds today isn't built from scratch. It's built on millions of years of survival, competition, instinct, and sometimes brutality. We're not saying this to make you despair. We're saying it because to understand who we are, you have to understand where we came from. The darkness, the innovation, the art, the cruelty. They're all part of the same package. The same brain that painted the walls of Lascaux also shaped skulls into drinking cups. The same hands that carved flutes from bone also broke open femurs for marrow. It's not about being pessimistic, it's about being honest. Because when you look into the eyes of those children whose bones were cut 850,000 years ago, you're not looking at strangers. You're looking at us, at what we're capable of, in the right or wrong circumstances. The miracle isn't that we were once cannibals. The miracle is that we ever stopped. But make no mistake, that part of us, it's still in there, hidden, dormant, but not gone. Because it's human, just like everything else we carry. If this story has made you think differently about our past, about what it means to be human, don't stop here. Subscribe for more truths buried in time, and comment below what shocked you the most. And remember, evolution didn't just build our bodies, it shaped our choices. Let's learn from them. They weren't monsters, they were us. And that's the part people often can't sit with, the fact that the perpetrators weren't some failed evolutionary branch, some savage subhuman experiment that never made it. They were part of our family tree, ancestors, cousins, and in some cases, us, modern humans, fully capable of speech, culture, and symbolic thought. We have this image, don't we, of the noble caveman, the survivalist, the innovator crouched beside a fire under the stars, inventing language or painting on cave walls. And it's not wrong. Those things happened, but that same hand that drew an aurochs in ochre might have, days earlier, skinned a human child. The same mouth that sang early lullabies might have also cracked open a skull for brain matter. There's a quote by historian Yuval Harari: "The most successful animals are also the most cruel." Success in evolutionary terms doesn't require ethics. It rewards whatever works. And if consuming your enemies, especially their children, meant one less tribe to compete with in 20 years, then evolution didn't judge that as evil. It judged it as effective. And so generation after generation, groups refine their hunting strategies, not just for deer, but for people. There are archaeologists today who still struggle to publish findings like these because it challenges the idea of linear progress. We love our clean stories, fire, tools, art, civilization, but this other thread we keep finding, it's more jagged, more brutal, a reminder that intelligence doesn't inherently bring empathy, that ingenuity can be turned toward harm just as easily as good. And yet, there's something more haunting. Because even in the darkest layers of these caves, even in the sediment that tells stories of butchery and brain extraction, there are traces of tenderness. Burial sites with red ochre sprinkled like sacred dust, a child's skeleton laid gently beside a seashell, a mother's arm curled protectively around a tiny ribcage. This duality is what makes us human. Not just the violence, but the capacity for both extremes to coexist in the same species, sometimes in the same individuals, one day protecting, the next destroying. Consider the footprints at Matalascañas in Spain, discovered in ancient sediment dated to over 100,000 years ago. They show a group moving across soft ground. Adults, children, maybe even an infant, some walking purposefully, others meandering, a moment frozen in time, a family, a band, people. What we don't see are the moments before and after. Were they fleeing another group? Searching for food? Had they just lost someone? Had they just taken someone? We don't know. And maybe that's the lesson here. That we, sitting in the modern world, still carry these contradictions. We donate to charity and cheer for war. We celebrate peace and binge murder documentaries. We're drawn to compassion and horror with the same intensity. The bones remind us that morality isn't inherited, it's chosen, again and again, culture by culture, day by day. And maybe that's why these stories matter, not to shame our ancestors, not to shock modern viewers, but to ask, what are we choosing today? Because if we're not careful, the future could look back on our own time and see butchered remains, not literal perhaps, but systemic. A world where some lives are valued less than others, where the vulnerable are sacrificed for the convenience of the strong, where cruelty is normalized because it's efficient. Sound familiar? The caves of Grand Dolina whisper a warning. So do Goyet, Guff's Cave, and Krapina. They're not just archaeological sites, they're mirrors, held up to humanity, asking us to look, really look, and decide what kind of humans we want to be. They're mirrors, yes, but they're also warnings written in bone. Let's go back to Guff's Cave one more time, not for the bones this time, but for what came after. The Magdalenians who carved skulls into drinking vessels, they eventually disappeared. Not in a fiery end or violent collapse, but faded, absorbed, replaced by newer groups with different tools, different art, different values. Maybe they were pushed out. Maybe they integrated. Maybe they just changed. Cultures, like people, evolve. What was acceptable in one generation becomes taboo in the next. The thing is, taboos aren't genetic. They're stories, taught, passed down, enforced through shame, tradition, community. And stories can be forgotten. That's the fragility of morality. The bones in those caves don't just show cannibalism, they show knowledge. Techniques refined, repeated, taught. Someone had to learn where to cut, how to crack the femur for marrow, how to peel back the scalp. Someone else had to teach it, just as, in another band, someone taught how to make fire, or tie sinew, or deliver a child. We pass down our darkness the same way we pass down our light. The lesson here isn't that ancient humans were monsters. It's that they were human, with all that implies, with needs, fears, strategies, and in some cases, the willingness to reduce another person to meat. It's uncomfortable to think about, because it suggests we still carry that capacity. But isn't that the point of history? Not to admire our ancestors blindly, or to condemn them, but to understand them, so we can understand ourselves. Because here's the twist most people miss when they hear these stories. The real danger isn't that ancient humans were brutal. It's that we still are. We just dress it up better. We don't call it cannibalism, but we devour each other in other ways. We consume labor without care for the body behind it. We wage war from miles away. We exploit, discard, forget. Sometimes I think about the bones future archaeologists will find. A century from now, 1,000. What will they make of our mass graves, our conflict zones, our refugee camps? What conclusions will they draw about the morality of modern humans? Will they see compassion in our records, in the hospitals, shelters, resistance movements? Or will they see cruelty masked by convenience? What story will our bones tell? Because bones never lie. They don't care about your politics, your excuses, your carefully worded PR statements. Bones tell the truth about violence, about choices, about how we treat each other when no one's watching. The truth is, humans have always existed on a knife's edge between survival and sacrifice, between compassion and cruelty. And the line between them has never been fixed. It bends with pressure, with hunger, with fear, with the slow erosion of empathy. That's what the archaeological record really shows. Not just events, but thresholds, points where morality failed, where community broke down, where the us became them, and them became food. We've seen it in history too, in siege towns, in shipwrecks, in death camps. Cannibalism is the most literal version, but the impulse to dehumanize, to consume, to survive at another's expense is much broader and much more familiar. But if there's a darkness in us, there's also something else, something the bones can't quite show, but the fire pits, the artwork, the graves whisper. Love, yes, love. What else do you call it when a group cares for a disabled elder for years, when a child is buried with toys, when red ochre is smeared lovingly over a body long dead? The same hands that carved open skulls also carved flutes. That's the contradiction of being human. We are not one thing. We are the capacity for anything. And that's why this story matters. Because if we understand that even the worst behaviors were possible under certain conditions, then we have a chance, a real chance, to prevent them in our time, to teach different lessons, to pass down different stories, to build a world where the idea of eating another person, metaphorically or literally, is unthinkable, not because we can't, but because we choose not to. We can rewrite the narrative. We can evolve morally even if we haven't changed biologically, but only if we're honest about where we came from. And that means looking into the cave, even when we don't like what we see, because that's where the truth lives. In the bones, in the blood, in the buried, in us. If this journey into the shadowed past of our species shook you, good. We weren't meant to be comfortable here. We were meant to confront what's buried in the earth and in ourselves. And if you're still watching, it means you have the courage to look. So don't stop now. Subscribe for more truth, more mystery, more stories that challenge everything we think we know. Because the bones aren't done talking, and neither are we.